Hello everyone, and welcome back to Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. Another of our Chinese web novels, specifically the most entertaining one, I think. It's far more focused on comedy and humor than it is on other things, even though there is some drama and some romance later. If you're just hopping in, this is the story of a man who was reading a book. He was reading a novel, hated it, complained about it, and suddenly died. And he woke up in the body of the villain of the book he hated so much. So now it's his mission to try and improve the story of the book, to keep the villain from dying, and to help the actual hero of the story, who is his student, Luo Binghe. It's got some interesting twists and turns, which we will get to eventually. Today we are on chapter 13. Last time, the demons that had invaded the mountain sect were cornered and challenged the good guys to a battle of 3 versus 3, a tournament basically. And we were coming to the end of the tournament, and the big hammer guy with the poison armor attacked Luo Binghe, and our hero, Shen Qingqiu, leapt in to save him without any thought. Where's Shen Qingqiu? Here, Bob, you gotta get up. I gotta go get him. It's time for readings. Say hi, Bob. You go right there. There you go. How could I possibly forget to bring our hero, Shen Qingqiu, in for the reading? He can sit right there. Poor Bob ran away. He says, "You've replaced me with a stuffed animal. I'm leaving." Alright. We'll scoot you over. Scoot you right there. Okay. Chapter 13. Posers draw lightning strikes. His hammer had already been seized by Shen Qingqiu. Could it be he wanted to use his body to crush Luo Binghe? But looking at his open arms, at his pose like he was about to give Luo Binghe a hug, in Shen Qingqiu's brain, his thoughts suddenly made several lightning-like turns, and his entire body broke out in a cold sweat. Fuck me! He's still wearing the poison-spiked armor. In that instant, Shen Qingqiu completely forgot about the rule of Luo Binghe having an indestructible body. Subconsciously, he once again moved to block. Zhuya left its sheath, blade flashing bright like snow, and pierced right into Elder Skyhammer's heavy body. But he had behind him an entire body's worth of brute force and all-out effort, and didn't back down even with a hole pierced into him. Instead, he seemed overjoyed, vehemently rushing forward, forcefully letting Zhuya run clean through him and out his back, his face stretched in a sinister grin, and threw himself at Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu quickly made the decision and promptly gave up stopping him, but it was already too late. From his right hand came stabs of pain, and immediately his heart chilled down to its depths. Skyhammer collapsed to the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood, and laughed madly. "Shen Qingqiu, I've taken you down with me! Ha ha ha! It was worth it!" "Shizun!" Luo Binghe suddenly grabbed Shen Qingqiu's hand. "You've been pierced!" Shen Qingqiu wrenched his hand free and said, "Nothing's wrong. I wasn't pierced. Don't listen to his alarmist ravings." As he spoke, he lowered his head to glance at it, and his heart once again was a frantic bullet screen of fuck, rushed by. From the back of his hand to his forearm were rows and rows of tiny pinholes. They were turning red. Luckily, he didn't have trypophobia. Instead, after Luo Binghe saw it, his face went completely white. No one could hear the raging waves in Shen Qingqiu's heart. "Motherfucker, how many times has the male lead screwed you over? It's already been said he won't die. He can't die. Why did you specially rush to rescue him? Fuck!" Elder Skyhammer had finally dragged someone down with him, and it was a heavyweight. No longer even a bit depressed, he gleefully said, "This old man has never spoken only to scare. If I say this poison has no cure, then it has no cure. Peak Lord Shen, be at ease and await your death." A blade flashed. Luo Binghe pulled out Zhuya and held it to his throat. his movements so matchlessly agile Shen Qingqiu nearly missed them. At this time, it seemed as if Luo Binghe was another person. He coldly said, "Your group must have a solution. If you don't hand over the antidote, I'll definitely kill you first." Xia Hualing suddenly said, "Young master, Elder Skyhammer truly isn't lying. This poison is called without a cure. When it comes to humans, it indeed has no cure. To lose a match and also do something like this, only death awaits him. Why would he fear you threatening him with death?" Without a cure? There has never been a poison named with less effort. Even though he'd seen the original work and had long known about this rare poison, Shen Qingqiu could still not help ranting at the pragmatism of Great Master Airplane's naming sense. For those who are new or don't remember, Airplane is the nickname of the guy that wrote this book, so he's complaining that the writer sucks. Xia Hualing's eyes flashed. It was obvious that the sudden twist in their circumstances, she was once again scheming something malicious. How could Shen Qingqiu not be clear on her character's nature? He circulated his spiritual energy to suppress the continuous waves of pain and twitching in his right hand, while his lips bore a smile, purposefully putting on a mask of effortlessness, and said, "While your words aren't wrong, has Miss Shaw forgotten that I've already cultivated for many years? As one in mid-core formation stage, could I still be considered a common person?" Xia Hualing's expression immediately changed. However, it quickly settled again, and she laughed delicately while saying, "Whether you're a common person or not, I do not know. But I do know a method that can be used to determine whether Shen Shen has successfully been poisoned. When a person is affected with without a cure, starting from their wound, their spiritual flow will become disconnected. This will slowly spread to their entire body. In the end, not only their spiritual chi, but even their blood will coagulate and stagnate. I ask Senior Shen to send a spiritual blast with his right hand. Then he will understand." A spiritual blast, as the name implied, involved amassing a large amount of spiritual energy into a single point, then letting it violently explode, using the waves of spiritual energy, powerful oscillations, as an attack. The effect was similar to pulling a trigger and firing a bullet, or hurling a detonator. How it appeared in reality depended on the cultivation of the user. Shen Qingqiu had attempted it privately himself and had been able to achieve the level of throwing a grenade, but now his right hand was like an intricate robot's with part of its circuits shorted out. He forcefully exerted himself, but his spiritual flow was completely cut off. God damn it, he couldn't have been crippled with just this, right? Upon hearing Without a Cure's description, Luo Binghe's lips trembled. In this instant, all the times Shen Qingqiu had wronged him in the past were wiped from his heart. The only thing he was clear about was that the demons had harmed Shizun to the point that his abilities might be crippled, even his life might be forfeit, all because of him. Shen Qingqiu saw his expression fluctuate and patted his head in passing. "No need to worry." Shen Qingqiu lifted his eyes, smiling slyly while saying, "There's no harm in trying, only that I can't do it without some return. Miss Shaw, today you ran amok in Chongding Peak. This one has been enduring it until now. Now I've changed my decision. I can't let you come and go as you please. If I do, won't Kangchong Mountain Sec become a laughingstock? How about we exchange palm strikes and set down a contract of life and death? No matter who is injured and how, we will bear the blame ourselves. Whatever the result, we must accept it completely. How about it?" He couldn't show weakness now. The entire Chongding Peak now depended only on him, a member of the older generation, for support. As soon as he fell, with Xia Hualing's mercilessness, at best the result would be the demons destroying Chongding Hall, then carrying the inscription and mountain gates back to the demon world, and thereafter the sect's reputation would plummet. At worst, it'd be a massacre of the entire mountain. Don't doubt it, the woman was definitely capable of doing something like that. It would be better to take a desperate risk and make this one gamble. Killing her at the last moment wouldn't be difficult. Shen Qingqiu hadn't noticed that unconsciously he no longer considered the disciples around him, whether they were anxious, resolute, angry, or indecisive, as mob characters the novel had described in a scant number of words. Xia Hualing bit her lip, incredibly torn. If Shen Qingqiu really hadn't been poisoned, this exchange of blows would directly pit their spiritual strength against each other, and she would definitely be killed. But if he was only bluffing, and she missed this big chance to wipe out Chongding Peak, wouldn't she regret it for life? Shen Qingqiu calmly looked at her. On his expression was neither anticipation nor avoidance, waiting for her to make her decision. Luo Binghe yanked his sleeve. "Shizun, this disciple is willing to take Shizun's place and receive the strike." Shen Qingqiu yanked his sleeve back without a change in expression. In what sense is a master standing behind his own disciple acceptable? Luo Binghe said, "Shizun was injured for this disciple's sake." Shen Qingqiu gave him a glare. "Since you know it was for your sake, then properly protect this life of yours." Luo Binghe's heart suffered a heavy blow. He was unable to speak, but the rims of his eyes turned red. At last, Xia Hualing gritted her teeth and said, "Then Shen, please forgive Ling Er's rudeness." Shen Qingqiu said, "Come, I won't show any mercy. Let fate decide who lives or dies." Xia Hualing's heart thundered in her chest, and she didn't even dare reply, her fire-red figure rising with a leap, her snow-white, jade-like palm bearing a billow of overwhelming, black, demonic qi. Shen Qingqiu kicked Luo Binghe aside. Having made his preparations, with this one strike, he'd ensure there were no winners. However, he was neither sent flying by Xia Hualing's palm strike, nor did he cough up fresh blood, with his body destructing and killing him. Roiling with killing intent, the master of Baizan Peak, whose sword had already left its sheath, without even lifting a single finger and using only the spiritual energy bursting forth from his body, blasted away Xia Hualing, who was attacking with her entire strength. After a short silence, Chongding Peak boiled over. Liu Shishu has left seclusion! The Baizan Peak war god has left seclusion! You demons, let's see if you can still be arrogant. The cheers were greater than the total amount of coolness Shen Qingqiu had painstakingly farmed up until now. A rain of tears showered down on Shen Qingqiu's heart. You damn show-off! Would it kill you to arrive sooner? Could you leave some coolness points for me? This truly proved itself to be a fan-service-packed stallion novel. After Xia Hualing was blasted away, other than a single delicate scream, the red gauzy cloth on her body that barely covered anything in the first place also tore into shreds, inciting a series of alarmed cries. She used a beautifully executed roll to cushion herself and stood up with a grunt. Demons were indeed bold and unrestrained by custom. Even though her entire body was censored out, she wasn't ashamed in the slightest, and only spitefully tore off the cloak of a subordinate beside her, carelessly throwing it over herself while saying, "Everyone, today was my miscalculation. We will definitely meet again in the future. Let's go." Liu Qingqiu sneered and said, "Coming and going as you please. How shameless. Dream on." His posture shifted, and the Shen Yuan on his back soared into the sky, summoning tangible sword glares by the hundreds and thousands which arrayed themselves into a glowing array before stabbing downwards, descending like rain or hail on the crowd of demons. Xia Hualing led her troops and fled while whirling a bolt of red gauze above her head before throwing it upwards. Unfortunately, it simply could not block the fierce rain of sword glares. The red gauzy material was quickly pierced full of holes. On top of that, Kangchong Mountain Sect's disciples were hemming them in, and so most of the demons suffered great injuries or were captured. Only the small heart of the group that had kept right up against Xia Hualing managed to flee down the mountain, thoroughly battered and humiliated. After returning his sword to his sheath, Liu Qingqiu turned, stone-faced, to examine the condition of the wound on Shen Qingqiu's hand. The Qingjing Peak disciples also came to surround them, more than 10 faces, all filled with the same expression of anxiousness. Shen Qingqiu sighed and said, "It was definitely the right decision to send Ning Yingying to copy Shu Si, what is it? And pound on the wall of Ning Shi Caves, wailing until you came out." Okay. Oh, okay, so he's referencing a Chinese movie. He's saying he sent one of the disciples to the cave where Liu Qingqiu was training and had her wail and cry and say, "We're all in danger, come help!" And so he arrived in time. Liu Qingqiu asked, "Who's Shu Yi?" Shen Qingqiu replied, "The world's greatest beauty. How am I?" So apparently he's talking about an actress, who of course these people would have no idea who that is. Liu Qingqiu humphed and said, "You won't die for now." Though he said this, the spiritual energy his left hand was sending into Shen Qingqiu's body did not stop, and his expression became increasingly grave. Shen Qingqiu looked at his hand, and Liu Qingqiu specially clarified, "What I owe in Lingxi Caves, I'm returning." So damn tsundere. So he's saying, "I'm not helping you because I like you. I'm helping you to return the favor you did me." Ugh. His plan to nab Liu Qingqiu as a teammate had promise, but the meridians of Shen Qingqiu's entire body underwent a series of convulsions, and he was unable to smile. Luo Binghe said, Liu Shishu, does this poison without a cure truly have no cure?" Liu Qingqiu glanced at him. Before he could answer, Shen Qingqiu's knees suddenly went weak and he almost fell into a kneel. Luckily, Luo Binghe had been supporting him the entire time. But Shen Qingqiu really could not stand anymore, and he waved his hand while saying, Let me lie down for a while." Luo Binghe had never seen Shen Qingqiu this weak. He kneeled beside Shen Qingqiu with bloodshot eyes, choking on sobs as he said, "Shizun." With great difficulty, Shen Qingqiu lifted an arm and patted Binghe's head like he'd always wanted to. The mouthful of fresh blood he'd been holding back finally spilled falteringly forth. Since things were like this, he still persistently and tenaciously finished saying an important line for currying favor. "I knew that you'd definitely win." Upon hearing this sentence, a tremor went through Luo Binghe's entire body. Thinking about it afterwards, Shen Qingqiu felt that if he'd been looking at this with an omniscient viewpoint, he'd have burst out smashing the book down and cursing. The fuck is with this character? Hurting him one moment, saving him the next. Messed in the head. Ugh. At this time, the system sent out a notification. Shen Qingqiu's character complexity rating, +20. Character depth rating, +20. Character suspense rating, +10. Total B points, +50. Shen Qingqiu was terrified. This was how character depth was calculated? Also, please don't randomly create strange point types, thank you. His vision going dark, Shen Qingqiu lifted his head, and though he saw Luo Binghe's tears, thought he saw Luo Binghe's tears falling from his eyes like pearls. Must be mistaken. This was his last thought before he lost consciousness. This dude really does not understand Luo Binghe at all. Like, he knows him as a character, but he's not taking in who he is as a person, the way that he's evolving. He doesn't understand at all how much Shen Qingqiu matters to him. Ugh. And y'all know that's going to be a problem in the future. Chapter 14, Vulgar Setup. After sleeping for an unknown length of time, Shen Qingqiu finally awoke, more dead than alive. Opening his eyes and seeing the familiar white gauzy curtains above his head, he knew that he was on Qingjing Peak, in his quiet and peaceful residence. He took a deep breath, wanting to stretch, when he suddenly realized that the door had opened and someone entered. Mingfan held a tray in both hands. Seeing him awake, he threw the tray onto the table and started to bawl. "Shizun, you're finally awake!" There was still another person standing outside. Luo Binghe stood by the entrance, like he wanted to come in, yet hesitated. Mingfan bawled for a while, soaking a large patch of the bedsheet before turning back and rebuking Luo Binghe. "Why are you still standing here? Don't you know that seeing you annoys Shizun?" Then he said to Shen Qingqiu, "I don't know what's wrong with this guy. He insisted on staking himself here like a stick or something, even after showing him he won't leave." Hey, folks jumping in. Hi, Anna. Green Sardonyx. Thanks for joining us. Shen Qingqiu waved his hand. "No matter, let him." Mingfan said, I'll go fetch Liu Shishu, Zhangman Shibo, and Mu Shishu. They said to tell them when you wake up." After saying this, he got up with a grunt and rushed outside. Looks like he'd slept for a very long time. Yu Qingyuan had already returned. As for Mu Shishu, that must be Qian Kao Peak's Mu Qingfan. Qianqiu Peak specialized in medication and was proficient in the art of medicine, so him being here was a must. Luo Binghe let him pass, and even after seeing that Ming Fan had gone a distance, still wouldn't leave his spot. He only stared fixedly into the room, his fist clenched tightly the entire time. Shen Qingqiu slowly sat up and said, "Do you have something to say? Then come in." Luo Binghe complied and entered the room, then suddenly with a thump fell to his knees before the bed. "Wait a moment. System, what's going on? All I did was sleep for a while. How did things become like this after waking up? How long did I sleep for? Is this already 10 years in the future?" After kneeling, Luo Binghe raised his head, gaze fervent and full of guilt. "Shizun, please forgive this disciple's foolishness and ignorance up until now." Foolishness and ignorance? No matter who you're describing with these words, you can't describe Luo Binghe with them. Originally, this disciple was always under the impression that Shizun didn't care about me at all. Only after the third match did I understand how much painstaking effort Shizun had put in. Shen Qingqiu thought, No. Your original Shizun really didn't care about you. He earnestly wished you were dead, really. Although, exactly what painstaking efforts of mine did you understand? Say it out loud, I'm very curious myself." Hey, look a lotus. But Luo Binghe did not continue speaking on the topic, and only earnestly said, "From this day forth, this disciple will definitely carry out my duty and serve Shizun with all my heart. Obey only Shizun's esteemed commands." Shen Qingqiu looked at him with a complicated expression. All the mistreatment and abuse from the past completely forgotten, just because he'd saved him once? Surely this favor was too easy to farm. Of course, he was unable to understand the course of Luo Binghe's thoughts at that time, with its hundreds and thousands of twists and turns. Shen Qingqiu was silent for a moment, then said, "As long as you understand. First, why don't you get up?" Even though he didn't understand in the slightest. "Binghe, what exactly did you realize?" "Hey, Phil." "Oh, hey, Alice. Where's Bob?" Here, let me get my camera back out so I can see. "There's a Bob. Gotta sit on Mom lap. Can you say hi, Bob? Can you say hi? Say, no, I sleeping. Mommy, I sleeping." All right. He watched Luo Binghe slowly stand up, yet he remained unwilling to leave and instead seemed bashful, as if there was something he wanted to say. Shen Qingqiu asked, "Is there something else?" Luo Binghe said, "Shizun has slept for many days and just woke up. I was wondering if you have an appetite." In actuality, strictly speaking, Shen Qingqiu had long restricted himself into an idia. Even if he didn't eat, he'd be fine. But he was unable to resist his nature of craving good food. As soon as he heard there were things to eat, his eyes went green with desire. Very much so. Luo Binghe immediately ran to the kitchen. Every couple of hours for the past few days, he'd been remaking a serving of congee, and now it could finally be put to use. After bringing the congee, still steaming hot, to the table, Luo Binghe helped Shen Qingqiu sit up on the bed, so solicitous it made one's hair stand up, coming just short of feeding Shen Qingqiu directly. Shen Qingqiu's forearms burst out in a bit of goosebumps. He ate a few mouthfuls, using the ladle himself, and saw that Luo Binghe was still standing by his bedside, silently watching him. Shen Qingqiu thought for a moment, then suddenly came to a realization and reservedly said a few words of praise. "It's quite good." It wasn't just quite good. The branch that was Qingjing Peak, just from the name, you could tell they tended towards the fresh and light, and even the style of their cooks followed this principle. After eating their food for so long, Shen Qingqiu's mouth had become bland enough to hatch chicks. This is apparently a pun, because in China, the word for bland is a homophone for the word for egg. Huh. And though the bowl in his hand was full of congee, perhaps it was an issue of ingredients and technique, but compared to the watery, meager congee he'd had in the past, it was on a different level. Snow-white rice congee, finely chopped scallions, delicious minced pork, and shredded ginger in just the right amount, all at the perfect temperature. It had been too long. Shen Qingqiu almost wept. Hearing his praise, Luo Binghe's eyes immediately shone, and he said, "If Shizun likes it, how about this disciple does this for Shizun every day? Shen Qingqiu choked on the spot. Luo Binghe rushed to pat his back. Shen Qingqiu waved him off, expressing that he was fine. He'd only gotten a bit of a shock. Luo Binghe's excellent cooking skills were his lady-killing weapon. He'd never thought he'd have this rare honor, to eat what only a few key harem members in the original work got to eat. Luo Binghe no Riori. Apparently that's a way of saying Luo Binghe's cooking, apparently being so fancy and stuff. Congee, to my understanding, is like, kind of like porridge or oatmeal, I think. It's a rice dish that's kind of thick. Oh, all right. Even more shocking was the line. Oh, that line. This line. I'll do this for you every day. Wasn't that what Luo Binghe had used to coax several spoiled young ladies into willingly and ecstatically entering his harem? Eating whatever you want is fine, but saying whatever you want is not. So Shen Qingqiu starting to see that the novel's kind of crossing over where he's getting the romantic subplots instead of the women. Seeing that Shen Qingqiu's expression was strange, Luo Binghe was slightly uneasy and asked, "Shizun dislikes it?" "You made me free food. Whoever dislikes it is an idiot." But Shen Qingqiu said amiably, "This master likes it very much. From today onwards, I'll leave this to you." Finally, he didn't need to continue eating that watery, meager fare. Under the great Qingjing Peak's guidance, they probably couldn't even open a mess hall. Having received approval, Luo Binghe once again blossomed like a spring flower. Shen Qingqiu watched that appearance of his, and without knowing why, his hand suddenly itched, wanting to pat that head again. Could it be that Binghe's head had a special magnetic field? Otherwise, why couldn't he control his hand? He just wants to pat his baby boy. He just wants to pat him. I pat my baby boy. After making a happily beaming Luo Binghe leave, returning his goodwill by using him as hard labor, Shen Qingqiu knocked on the system. Is the scenario at the Endless Abyss unavoidable? If Luo Binghe misses the Endless Abyss scenario, satisfaction points, -10,000. Upon hearing the number at the end, Shen Qingqiu, once again, out of habit, vomited a fountain of blood. After vomiting, he wiped his mouth. Whatever, he'd vomited so much he'd gotten used to it. Of course, this is exaggeration for how he's so shocked. This was very logical. If Luo Binghe wasn't struck into the Endless Abyss, he wouldn't be able to activate his golden finger. If the protagonist couldn't become overpowered, where was the satisfaction? Therefore, the Endless Abyss was unavoidable. And as this novel's #1 loser, #1 scummy villain, the execution of this glorious task naturally, absolutely, inescapably had to fall to him. Unwilling to give up, he asked for another while and ended up sighing, still unable to give up completely. Luo Binghe, who was currently like a little sun, was destined to fall and become that gloomy, cold-blooded demon man. Even a transmigrator like him, who ought to have access to cheats, was unable to change this reality. He was designated to be the man who struck the protagonist into the Endless Abyss, catalyzing his overpowered legendary journey. This job's outlook was really terrible. If he didn't do it, his satisfaction points would be deducted by 10,000. He couldn't be more thoroughly dead. If he did it, after activating his golden finger, Luo Binghe definitely wouldn't let him off. Even the benefits during normal times were bad. Having to diligently work while underpaid, what exactly was this? Luo Binghe hadn't left for long when several of his sect siblings came to visit. Shen Qingqiu lay on the bed reading a novel while hiding it inside a text on Taoism. Why are you hiding? Goodness. Oh, I love him. He's so attached to the idea of looking like the perfect scholar that he can't even let people know he reads fiction. Upon seeing Chen Yuan enter, he shut the books without missing a beat, so that the novel was tucked inside, with the Taoism text cover exposed proudly. He wanted to get off the bed, but Chen Yuan hurried to stop him. Don't move around carelessly. You shouldn't be leaving the bed right now. Just keep lying down. He turned to Mu Qingfan, who was behind him. Mu Shidi, come take another look. During the time he was unconscious, Mu Qingfan had already diagnosed and treated him once. This time was probably for further diagnosis. Shen Qingqiu held out his wrist and politely said, I'm troubling Mu Shidi. Mu Qingfan startled briefly, then nodded, sitting by the bed and putting his fingers on Shen Qingqiu's pulse. With his medical expertise as the Chen Qingqiu Peak Lord, no matter how complicated the case was, he only needed an instant to make a judgment and come up with a prescription. But he still conscientiously stayed there for a long while before finally removing his fingers, expression solemn. What is transmigration? Daniel wants to know. It's a style of story where a character dies in one universe and then they wake up in the body of somebody else in a different universe. In this case, he lived in the normal world where we live. He was just a normal guy, and then he died and he woke up in the body of a fictional character. And hey, Delvin. Shen Yuan said, "How is it?" As the person concerned, Shen Qingqiu showed no reservedness. Can the poison be cured or not? Liu Qingge shook out his sleeve, sitting down next to the table, and humphed. Its name is without a cure, you think? Shen Qingqiu sighed and said, Then Mu Shidi might as well tell me, how many years do I have left? How many months or days? Mu Qingfan shook his head, saying, Even though it's without a cure, it can be repressed. His voice was even, neither quiet nor loud, but Shen Qingqiu felt like he'd hit the jackpot. This poison, although it was called without a cure, in truth, there was a cure. But in the original work, at the Immortal Alliance conference, with its climax after climax, a lovable and graceful little shime from another sect had been hit by this rare poison. The important thing was, she was the protagonist's woman. Have you ever seen a stallion novel where the male lead let his own woman be poisoned to death? If there was, it would be a subpar stallion novel. And that would be a shitty failure of a novel. The cure was very simple. Let us review the developments in the original work. Because the plot was unavoidable, to save the male lead she'd known for less than one shichen, Wan Yu Shime was hit by a demon's underhanded trick and her body became infected with the poison. Luo Binghe felt that he had an unshirkable duty and therefore took on the burden of looking for a cure for Wan Yu Shime. It just happened that deep within the mountains where the Immortal Alliance conference was being held, there grew a spray of mythical 1,000-year-old flowers. Sorry, exactly what the name was, whatever flower or whatever grass, Shen Qingqiu had already forgotten, because the number of mythical flowers within Proud Immortal Demon Way numbered at least in the hundreds, and every single one was at least 1,000 years old. And then adding on all the mythical grasses and mythical trees, who the hell could remember all those names? Airplanes shooting towards the sky, do you think mythical flowers are like Chinese cabbages on sale? Leave mythical flowers at least a little of the dignity that comes with being rare and precious. Luo Binghe had thought this legendary flower would definitely be able to cure the poison within Wan Yu Shime's body, and put a tremendous amount of effort into picking it for her. Just picking the flower took 3 days, 30 chapters. For 3 days, they journeyed to pick the flower while fighting monsters and, through exchanging flirtatious glances, developed a deep sense of camaraderie. Wan Yu Shime's poison had worsened, her entire body fragile and devoid of strength, when Luo Binghe finally managed to pick the flower. The two of them were overjoyed and hurried to let Wan Yu Shime eat the flower raw. However, it was ineffective. The poison wasn't cured. Both their hearts sank. The girl thought, since I'm about to die, I must leave behind some memories. That way my life won't be in vain. I don't have many days left after all, so I won't suppress my feelings any more. Therefore, using her fragile and weak body, she pushed Luo Binghe down. Luo Binghe put up a brief show of resistance before using the reason of, she did it all for my sake. I don't have the heart to reject her final wish, to yield with half-hearted reluctance, and went along with it. Then, in the end, how was the poison cured? After the pa-pa-pa, the girl's poison was naturally cured! I don't know that we've had this word yet. Pa-pa-pa is the way that this author refers to sex. Let's see why... Okay, it's just onomatopoeia, you know, pop, pop, pop. So that is what she uses to refer to sex. So, having sex cured it. Is it ridiculous? Cliche? Impossible? But it's gratifying, right? Ridiculously gratifying. Because Luo Binghe was both of human and demon blood, right? The demon half of his bloodline was from their #1 saintly ruler of the heavenly demons from ancient times. A tiny, insignificant demonic poison wasn't enough to get stuck between his teeth, and had long been absorbed and digested completely by Luo Binghe during their pa-pa-pa. Incidentally, even the nutrients of the mythical flower the girl had just eaten raw were absorbed by him, so his martial ability was once again made great. Damn it! Oh, I love it. That is the end of that chapter. Just him explaining, the ridiculousness of the original story, and maybe a little foreshadowing as to the only way for this to be cured. Obviously, Luo Binghe is a child right now. Nothing is happening. This is a story that takes place over 20 years? 20 years? Chapter 15, Nightmare Instance. Let me get some water. The so-called protagonist's privilege was that even if he stepped in dog shit, there would be a hidden scroll or elixir inside, probably. As Shen Qingqiu flashed back on this segment, his facial expression kept changing erratically. Ooh, I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. He failed to notice even when the others addressed him. Chen Yuan had to repeatedly call him many times before he finally returned to himself. What? Mu Qingfan passed him a piece of paper. Continuously take these 4 medications daily. Circulate your spiritual energy with someone who has high qualities of it. They will assist you in maintaining regular spiritual circulation, and it shouldn't be a problem. After pausing for a moment, he said, I'm afraid from this day onwards, occasionally there will be situations that suddenly arise when Shen Shishang's spiritual qi will stagnate or your circulation will malfunction. The other 3 people in the room paid close attention to his expression. One must remember that to cultivators, the stagnation of your spiritual circulation was an incredibly terrifying problem, especially in a duel between experts, where a single slip in attention would mean your life. Little did they know, Shen Qingqiu was already very satisfied with this result. For this kind of scum villain role, to be poisoned with something like without a cure and still continue living, it was already giving him too much face. Even if he knew that pa-pa-pa with the protagonist could cure the poison, could he do that? Could he? Chen Yuan sighed and said, had I known this, I should not have left the mountain. Shen Qingqiu thought his tone was too serious and hurried to say, the Immortal Alliance Conference has always been a big event the various sect leaders work together to organize. Shishang, how could you not be there? This time was due to the demon's underhandedness and deceitfulness, as well as my own carelessness. Shishang must not hold yourself responsible. If he didn't say it clearly here, with Chen Yuan's personality, he might never leave the mountain ever again, stay and defend Kangchong Mountain Sect to his last. This was possible. Who'd know that Mu Qingfan would then also guiltily say, no, the fault is mine. If it weren't for me failing to realize there was a demonic invasion, as well as my skill being too poor, unable to fully cure Shen Shishang, it wouldn't have become like this either. No, it has nothing to do with you two. Thinking about it, I wasn't careful and smashed a giant hole in the ground in front of Chongding Hall with the hammer. The 3 of them devolved into jumbled urging, the scene both chaotic and comical, causing Shen Qingqiu to be both touched and embarrassed, his entire body breaking out into goosebumps and his scalp going numb. Liu Qingge stared out the window, face expressionless. He waited until they finished blaming themselves, took a sip of tea, and said, this matter must stay unknown to anyone outside the 12 Peak Lords. To be Kangchong Mountain Sect's 2nd Peak Lord, yet have such a deadly weakness. If outsiders became aware, it would not be fun. All 3 of them naturally understood. Chen Yuan said, does Qingqiu think the burden of Peak Lord too heavy? If it was the original Shen Qingqiu, he'd most likely suspect Chen Yuan of trying to reduce his authority, something of that sort. However, the current Shen Qingqiu knew that he was genuinely worried about him overworking and damaging his health, so he rushed to say, Shengmen Shishang, really don't worry about me anymore. I haven't been crippled to that extent yet. He gave a smile, then said, right now my hands, feet, and mouth still work, and I still have my cultivation. I'm plenty satisfied. Aw, thank you, Delvin. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you for the support. Then they discussed several details of that day's demon invasion, before Chen Yuan and Mu Qingfan took their leave first. Shen Qingqiu watched them go, thinking it all terribly funny, yet he also felt an unspeakable warmth and peace. He has friends. It's kind of implied, I feel like, they don't discuss it much, but I really don't feel like he had friends in his previous life. His family apparently was very rich, and he had a sister and a brother, but I don't think he was too close to them. I love that we're getting to finally see him have some family. His fellow disciples of Kangchong Mountain, even though their personalities were all different, with some easy to get along with and some difficult to get along with, they all breathed as one. Though split into 12 peaks, whether something went wrong, they were a dependable family, not including the original Shen Qingqiu. Liu Qingge put down his tea. It had long gone ice cold. If it weren't for your body's lack of ghostly qi, I would definitely suspect you'd been possessed. And this one who remained happened to be someone difficult to get along with. On a certain level, your guess is very correct, he thought. Liu Qingge continued, You saved me in Lingxi Caves. That's already inconceivable. During the demon ambush, you rescued a nameless disciple and almost lost your life. You were poisoned to the point of damaging your spiritual energy and should be furious, yet you peacefully accepted it. Others doing so wouldn't be strange, but you doing so upturns everything. Shen Qingqiu absolutely didn't want to discuss the issues of his own out-of-character personality with him. He called Mingfan, changing the tea, then leaned back and smiled, saying, Nameless? That's only for now. Liu Qingge said, That disciple of yours, his base is indeed excellent. However, a fair amount with this level of aptitude are picked up by the large sects every year, and in the end, the number who can truly become outstanding is not even 1 in 10,000. Shen Qingqiu suddenly sensed danger. What if Liu Qingge became a stumbling block on Luo Binghe's journey to becoming overpowered, and during a confrontation between the two of them, was KO'd in a snap? For everyone's sake, he needed to warn Liu Qingge. He patiently and earnestly said, Believe me, this disciple of mine will definitely be successful. I hope when Liu Shidi has the chance, you can frequently give him a little support and guidance. Mingfan was half dead from depression. He only went to change the tea, yet was forced to hear Shen Qingqiu, his ally in torturing a common enemy, say a heap of good words about Luo Binghe, praising him. The level of suffocation he felt was akin to the confidant you cursed a little bastard with suddenly became a couple with the same little bastard you'd tormented together for the years. Repulsed, he immediately decided to be repulsive to others. A stormy Mingfan found Luo Binghe in the kitchen, currently pondering what food to make Shen Qingqiu the next morning, and showered him with verbal abuse before commanding, Go chop some wood! Chop 80 pieces! Fill the entire woodshed! Fetch water! The water jars in our rooms are all empty! Are you blind? Can't you see? Luo Binghe said, perplexed, But Shishong, if the woodshed is full, where do I sleep? Mingfan stomped his foot, spittle flying everywhere. Isn't it flat here? Isn't it sleepable? I just filled the water jars in Shishong's room today. That water isn't fresh anymore. Redo it. Redo them all. If this was the past, there still might have been some grievances or bitterness in Luo Binghe's heart. But today, his attitude was completely different. In his eyes, these were all training experiences for him. He already had such a good Shizun, one who thought of everything for him, who was even willing to sacrifice his life for him. What training could he not take? What suffering could he not withstand? Luo Binghe didn't say another word. He immediately turned to get ready to work. Seeing him like this, Mingfan couldn't derive even a little satisfaction from the bullying, and instead felt stuffier. He walked while cursing. I really don't know what part of this brat caught Shizun's eye. For Shizun to suddenly see him in a new light, what will be successful, become outstanding? Even if that brat's fed Shizun some bewitching poison, Liu Shifu won't guide him or support him. Don't even think about it. Bah! Even though he was cursing the entire time as he walked, his voice wasn't loud. But how could Luo Binghe, with his blindingly fast progress and naturally sharp 5 senses, not hear? Even though all Mingfan muttered were harsh words and phrases, on the whole he touched on the keywords, so within an instant Luo Binghe guessed in bits and pieces most of the picture. Shizun actually spoke about him like this in front of Liu Shishu. Having someone talk about you in a place you couldn't see, this sort of feeling was truly wonderful. A flow of warmth suddenly surged in his heart. The more it surged, the stronger it became, gradually wrapping around his entire body. Luo Binghe felt like a steady strength had taken root somewhere in the depths of his heart, starting to bud. Even his hand carrying the heavy wooden bucket seemed to become stronger. At this time, not only did Luo Binghe not feel like others were making things difficult for him, he even showed a joyful, satisfied expression. I love it. He thinks, oh man, everything is making him think that Shen Qingqiu really loves and adores and believes in him. And he's not wrong. The reasons for it are mixed. Shen Qingqiu believes these things because he's read the book and he knows it's true. And, you know, he also does love Luo Binghe, as seen that he, you know, instinctively defends him and risks his life, even though he knows that it's not necessary. It's just so funny how these little misunderstandings, even though they're kind of sort of, yes, true, you know, how they lead to Luo Binghe's entire mindset changing, and Shen Qingqiu has no idea. If Shen Qingqiu was here, he would definitely suspect, within the depths of his heart, Luo Binghe was actually a masochist. However, Shen Qingqiu was completely unaware that thanks to student Mingfan, the useless teammate's divine assistance, Luo Binghe's favor had again risen to a new high. Right now, he was elatedly lying down. Today, the always lofty Qingjing Peak's doorstep almost broke from all the stamping. The various peak masters brought their disciples to visit. After all, during Xua Hualing's provocation, the rainbow bridges had been severed, and Chongding Peak had been sealed off by a barrier. They were unable to arrive at the scene, and so the burden of the fight had fallen on Shen Qingqiu. Anyhow, Kangchong Mountain didn't lose too much face. No matter if their past relationship had been good or bad, they had to come express some sentiments. Shen Qingqiu calmly received their greetings and used the chance to learn the faces of several peak lords he hadn't met before, while conveniently making some small talk and strengthening relationships. That night, he thought, finally I can have a peaceful night's sleep. 2 shishens later, that's their version of hour, I think it's 2 hours, and there's 12 of them in a day. Peaceful night's sleep, my ass. Shen Qingqiu stood in the middle of a stretch of chaotic nothingness and somberly stared out at the endless horizon. He'd plainly just been full of satisfied smiles, comfortably sinking into slumber in his bed. Could someone explain why he'd been dragged into this space? Shen Qingqiu really wished he had a gong, one he could ring to summon the system, so he wouldn't need to always yell at the top of his lungs within his mind. System, are you online? The system provides you with 24-hour service. Where is this? What's the situation? This is the world within the dream realm. Shen Qingqiu said, of course this is the dream realm. Show me how such abstract scenery can exist in reality. I'm asking why I'm here. Come on, please don't let it be what he's thinking. But this world really didn't give him any face, just as he thought. Don't. The next second he saw a figure that was incomparably familiar. Luo Binghe stood before him, bewildered, in the middle of a stretch of wasteland. He also seemed completely lost about why he'd appeared here. After a moment of bewilderment, suddenly Shen Qingqiu's form came into view. He startled, then immediately ran over happily, like a chick who'd seen its mother hen. What shitty simile is this? Shizun! He'd already been trapped in this world for a long time. Seeing Shen Qingqiu appear, he became momentarily excited and called repeatedly many times. As soon as Shen Qingqiu saw him, he knew what this place was and what scenario this was. Instantly, all of Shen Qingqiu's hopes turned to dust. A shower of tears raining down on his heart, and he patted Luo Binghe's shoulder. I already heard, no need to call me that many times. Luo Binghe hurried to say, yes, Shizun, how come you were also here? Do you know where this is? Lazy Shen Qingqiu directly copied the system's lines. This is the world within the dream realm. Luo Binghe asked again, then why am I here? Shen Qingqiu said, anyone else here can find it strange. Only your presence is natural. This is your dream realm. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my goodness, Bob. Bob's being so cute. Bobby, why are you being so cute? Oh my god. Bob. Oh my god. He's so cute. He just stretched and kicked my stomach. It was cute. We're going to read one more chapter. We're going to go a little long today because this is going to be the only stream I do today. I'm finishing up a lot of big changes and things to the YouTube setup and Patreon and things, and I want to knock it out, and then tomorrow I'll do some announcements, show y'all what's different. So, Chapter 16, Wrong Script, Part 1. Luo Binghe startled. Mine? He backed up a step, looking at the endless, desolate land and sky, and murmured, My dream realm was actually something like this? The realm, one's view of the world, reflected one's heart. He was so young, yet his mindscape was not filled with the red of flowers and the green of willows, but scenery like this. One could not help feeling sorrow. Shen Qingqiu pretended to ponder for a while. This is not an ordinary dream realm. I'm afraid that while you were unaware, someone tampered with it. The waves of spiritual energy within the dream realm are strong and unstable. This master was inadvertently pulled in by you. An expression of shame appeared on Luo Binghe's face. This disciple is useless and involved Shizun once again. He considered carefully. Exactly who would tamper with my dream realm? Shen Qingqiu was fully experiencing the joy of giving spoilers and got right to the answer. No need to think too much. There's demonic qi churning at the borders of this realm, and to use such low-burn methods, it undoubtedly must be a demon. Are we still doing a watch? Yeah, we'll watch something. I can put something on while I'm working away. Hearing these words, Luo Binghe was unsurprised. They only aroused his hatred towards demons, and he said, The ways of demons are truly poisonous. He really didn't know what sort of expression Luo Binghe would have in the future, thinking back on these words once he learned of his own mixed demon heritage. Shen Qingqiu gave a smile and said, Not necessarily poisonous. Perhaps their thoughts are of the opposite. Words that had been spoken from an omniscient perspective outsiders could not understand. Luo Binghe didn't understand. What did it mean their thoughts were the opposite? But Shen Qingqiu's smile seemed profound, the tail of his sentence lightly inflected upwards, carrying a somewhat frivolous tone, with a hint of something that would cause people's imaginations to run wild. Luo Binghe stopped there, not daring to think about it further. In actuality, Shen Qingqiu didn't have any intention of being frivolous. He thought himself very straightforward. The one who'd tampered with Luo Binghe's dream realm was Xia Hualing. Though she did have harmful intentions, everyone understood what she had even more, which was naturally the secret yearnings of a young girl in love. Otherwise, why did she not hurt others and only hurt him? For demon women, they must viciously bully the person they like. Only if he did not die would she accept him. If he died, that meant he was useless and not worth having any lingering affections for. This dream realm is rather complicated. An ordinary demon technique could not trap me. I can dispel those using only my thoughts. But this dream realm was truly meticulously made. I'm afraid if the core of the illusion isn't destroyed, no one will be able to leave. Luo Binghe became anxious. Even Shizun will be trapped in the dream forever? Shen Qingqiu glanced at him. You will be too. Luo Binghe's mind jolted, his face twitching red and white. It's all this disciple's fault. Shen Qingqiu said, Things are already like this, so words are meaningless. We should think of something as soon as possible to spell the barrier and leave. Luo Binghe silently nodded and followed behind Shen Qingqiu, heading towards the dream realm's border. Shen Qingqiu's face was smooth and unrippled, but his mind was a stormy sea. Currently, he was in a back and forth with the system. System alert! You are now entering an important subplot scenario, Meng Mo's barrier. During this subplot, please make sure to assist Luo Binghe in defeating Meng Mo's illusion. Otherwise, 1,000 satisfaction points will be deducted. Here it was again. Again deducting satisfaction points, and every time it was this kind of heart attack-inducing number. After assiduously working for so long, I've only managed to scrounge a couple of satisfaction points, while you remove 1,000 in a single deduction. Is that really fair? As a person, as a system, you shouldn't be so extreme. Although this wasn't the main point either. The main point was, this was the wrong script. Let us look at the summary of this scenario's original setup. Luo Binghe had been pushed into Meng Mo's range of attack, and before danger struck had sought protection instinctually, pulling the person he trusted most into the barrier with him. Shen Qingqiu urgently pounded on the system. Master, good master, esteemed master, are you sure there's no bug? Luo Binghe should be cozying up with a maiden for this section, and the maiden is responsible for unraveling the complexities of his heart, using love to help him defeat his inner demons. How come I've been substituted into this role? Where is the promised deep emotional heart-to-heart when she's accepted into the harem? Where's the promised little Shime who refuses to leave him, interdependent in life and death? Our self-inspection failed to find a bug. The system is running normally. No bug. That means that with this scenario, he either carries it out or he dies. This was the butterfly effect. The man cannot even contemplate that he could possibly be the person that Luo Binghe trusts most. Can't even fathom it. Originally, the one pulled along into Luo Binghe's nightmare was supposed to be Ning Ying Ying. As Luo Binghe's closest, most trusted person on Qingjing Peak in the early stages, this gate-crashing, intimacy-building task was her job. What was happening now? The hat of closest, most trusted person. How did it land on his head? Shen Qingqiu acted very flattered and overwhelmed, but he didn't want to accept this special distinction at all. Luo Binghe saw Shen Qingqiu's unreadable expression and asked in concern, "Shizun, what's wrong?" Shen Qingqiu promptly pulled himself together and calmly said, "Nothing's wrong. This master was thinking demons that manipulate dream realms often attack the human's heart weaknesses. You must be vigilant and on your guard." Luo Binghe nodded, his expression firm as he said, "This disciple will definitely not allow master to be dragged in again." This was too miserable. Not only had he been drawn into a dangerous situation, on top of that, he had to assume the task of playing out the maiden's role. Shen Qingqiu absolutely didn't want to charge through a mountain of knives or a sea of fire with the male lead and confront the terrifying Meng Mo, while also blocking knives for him and even providing free psychological coaching. Is he going to end up liking the story because he didn't hate it before? What's going to happen, and this isn't really spoilery, I feel like we're kind of obviously aimed that way. He liked Luo Binghe the character. He was really attached to him, which is why he finished reading a story he felt was really shitty. And he never really gets over the idea of how shitty it is. Bye, Phil. Thanks for joining us. Like, he continues to complain about it the whole time, but he likes Luo Binghe. And there are changes that are made that kind of increase, like, it's revealed that there's more to the story that wasn't seen in the original, and that's kind of his role, is to fix things. But the main focus is he always really liked Luo Binghe, and he's still not even really conscious of how much he liked him, but he will be one day. That said, complaining was useless. In the past, when he'd faced this kind of situation, his habit was to curse out airplanes shooting towards the sky. But thinking about it, Great Master Airplane was also innocent. He was a proper and upright stallion novel author and definitely wouldn't have wanted something like this to happen in his work. A healthy maiden being switched out for the Scum villain? How disheartening. Ordinary readers would be about to slam the book down. And you see, he really feels like he can't be allowed to have this role because narratively it doesn't make sense. So clearly he's wrong for it, even though he wants it, and eventually so does Luo Binghe. The two of them keep walking, the clouds above and scenery around them like a kaleidoscope, sometimes lengthening and twisting, other times shattering into thousands of fragments, erratic. The picture formed by the world as they walked was extremely eerie, like if the people had been illustrated by Da Vinci while the backgrounds had been by Picasso, the clash of styles not an ordinary intensity. Suddenly, from the dense cloud layers emerged the buildings of a city. The two of them stopped their steps. Luo Binghe looked at Shen Qingqiu, waiting for his signal. Shen Qingqiu muttered to himself, "We'll appropriately deal with whatever situations arise. Let's enter." Walking to the city gates, Luo Binghe raised his head to look, his expression slightly puzzled. Shen Qingqiu knew very well that he was thinking the city looked familiar. Of course it was familiar. This was the city Luo Binghe had wandered homeless in during his childhood. The city gates naturally had no guards defending them, and slowly opened by themselves. Shen Qingqiu led him inside. This dream realm was frightening in how real it seemed. When abstract, it was so abstract it became several blobs of color. When photorealistic, it was so realistic it would have been impossible to reproduce. The city's streets, markets, residences, vendor stalls, every single one was intricate enough to raise people's hackles. Lit brightly with lamps, with people coming and going. From a distance, it looked bustling and lively. But once he came close, even though Shen Qingqiu had long prepared himself, his heart almost escaped his ribcage. These people who were moving, All of them were faceless. Their faces were just blurry masses, features unclear, and they made no sound. They didn't seem like living people at all, yet they still bustled around, wandering back and forth. The entire city was deathly silent, creating an eerie sense of busyness. Luo Binghe had never seen a scene like this, and said, aghast, "Shizun, what are these things?" Shen Qingqiu was panicking a little from terror, but still took on the duty of an expository encyclopedia. This is an illusory city created by using a nightmare. In the dream realm, inanimate objects such as buildings and trees can be created, but living people cannot. At most, they can be made to this extent, speechless monsters lacking noses and faces. To be able to do something like this on the scope of a city and be able to blend the fake in with the genuine, I'm afraid this can only be one person. Luo Binghe was incredibly impressed and humbly sought instruction. That person? Shen Qingqiu said, Meng Mo. Meng Mo was this dream realm's instant boss. So, in the show, they call him Nightmare. So I'm assuming Meng Mo means something like nightmare. Meng Mo's true identity was that of a famous, brilliant, outstanding elder among demons. Several hundred years ago, a bout of divine punishment destroyed his physical body, yet his powerful spirit was completely undamaged, and from then on he became a parasite within others' dreams, subsisting by absorbing their spiritual energy and vitality. At the same time, he was also one of the protagonist's teachers on his road to becoming a demon. Or we could give him a more direct and intimate nickname, the Portable Grandfather. I love it! He's the portable granddaddy. You just got a grandpa on your shoulder. He was the one who, after Luo Binghe broke through the barrier, took a liking to the protagonist, taught him everything he knew about his lost arts, and from that point forth would occasionally help the male lead think up plans for taking care of small fry. Luo Binghe still wanted to ask a few more questions when his eyes involuntarily swept through the crowd and froze for a split second. Shen Qingqiu asked, despite knowing, "What's wrong?" Luo Binghe blurted out, "Faces! Shizun, just now, I think I saw people with faces." Shen Qingqiu readily heeded his words and said concisely, "Chase them." The two closely followed behind the few who were incongruous with the people and style of the surroundings, turning and twisting throughout the city until they finally stopped before an alley. In total, there were 5 people with faces. They appeared to be youths, each one's with noses and faces instead of blurry masses. 4 of them were tall and surrounding one who was on the ground, cursing and yelling incessantly. Things like little mongrel, bastard, flew around en masse. They completely failed to notice the people behind them. Luo Binghe said, "It looks like they can't see us." He looked at Shen Qingqiu as if asking, "Didn't you say Meng Mo was incapable of creating people with complete features?" Time for more abuse. Shen Qingqiu heaved a sigh in his heart and said, "Meng Mo indeed cannot create people using nightmares, but these people weren't created by him. Luo Binghe, look more closely at their faces." Luo Binghe slowly turned his gaze to them, and although his expression didn't change much, in a flash a cold drop of sweat dripped down his forehead. Shen Qingqiu said, "These are not illusions created by Meng Mo. They are projections of real people from your memories. Meng Mo only awakened these reflections from the memories sleeping within your mind." But Luo Binghe could no longer hear him. He placed his hands on his temples, and it seemed as if his head was twitching. Shen Qingqiu knew that Luo Binghe's inner demons had already struck. These 4 rowdy youths surrounded a child on the ground who appeared to be only 4 or 5 years old, and they were punching and kicking him. The shabbily dressed child had his head covered with both arms and was curled up on the ground, soundlessly taking the beating. It really made one worry that such a young child would be beaten to death. "This little mongrel sure is blind, daring to enter our territory and snatch our food. Must be tired of living. Step on him. He's pitiful, hungry with nothing to eat. Beat him to death and he won't worry about having nothing to eat." Aw, thank you, Pablo. Thanks for the support. Luo Binghe's head hurt to the point of splitting open. That small, fragile figure on the ground was the young him from the past, and through the disheveled hair and blood-stained face, 2 bright eyes like stars, like sharp swords shooting forwards, met his gaze. Luo Binghe was completely incapable of moving his eyes. Shen Qingqiu said lowly, Pull yourself together. It's only an illusion. Ba, 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 ba. That's the end of that chapter, and we will stop there since we've now read 4 of them. Thanks so much for joining me. No game stream, but we will do a movie, probably something lighthearted, because I'm gonna have to finish some work and stuff, so I don't want to like miss something cool. We'll just chill. Join the Discord if you'd like to do that. If you'd like to gain advantage of all the bonus content of the channel, you can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Links are in the description. I'm adding a lot of new stuff that I will go over tomorrow. Thanks for the members who were here. Jeff, Delvin, Pablo, Daniel, who else was here today? Phil was here for a while. Thank you guys for the support. You help keep the lights on and let the magic happen, and I really appreciate it. Tomorrow I'll be doing some kind of like a live discussion to explain some of the changes I've made to the channel, and then we will stream probably Fire Emblem, and then Friday we'll try and get through more of the Silmarillion, winding down on that. Yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.